How the people are doing. So, two phones that appear to be so similar could not be more different. I really like this comparison. It is perfect, in my opinion, and you'll know exactly why I say that soon enough as the comparison goes. So, let's kick things off, shall we, with the design as per usual. Now, look, it's simple. The design on both phones, they are phenomenal. I think these are two of the best designs I've had the pleasure of using this year. Simple as that. There are other phones as well that have really good designs. These are amongst the absolute best that have come out this year so far. It's a statement from my end, I absolutely believe in that. Because they are fantastic, no question about it, but they are also very different. And yes, both of these phones also have kind of subjective flaws in terms of the design. We'll get into it, but first, let's just wrap up the finish side of things, shall we? Because they are both stunning, to say the least. They look incredible, they feel amazing. There's no question about it that these are incredible finishes that we have, but one is more unique than the other. You obviously know what I'm talking about. The Xiaomi 14 Ultra has a leather finish, which is admittedly uncommon. And that is kind of sad. Like, I like the matte finish. This is probably one of the best matte finishes when it comes to the glass backs, but a leather finish hits different, it feels different, and that's a very good thing. To be completely frank, I'll tell you this much. I think even though I love the design on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, it is incredible, but for most people who are looking for a good, comfortable, really nice looking and really good feeling design, it's gonna be the X100 Pro. Simply because the weight distribution is perfect. It doesn't feel nearly as top heavy as the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. It doesn't bother me all that much, the top heavy aspect of the Xiaomi's design, but it is gonna bother a lot of people. I know that much for sure. So easily, the X100 is gonna take the comfort side of things. The looks, the uniqueness, maybe the Xiaomi takes it. If that's really what you're going for, if you really want to stand out as opposed to the X100 Pro, then maybe yes, the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is the way to go. But if you want a comfortable design, one that is functional yet looks absolutely stunning, then this is the best compromise that you're gonna get. I say compromise, but this is a beautiful design on the X100 Pro. But it's just that the Xiaomi 14 Ultra has this insane, incredible, bold, and again, unique design that it just works. Turning over to the front, things are gonna be very different. And initially, you might think that the X100 Pro is more comfortable. It is, because the railings and just the way the glass blends into them, it just works really well. It feels very smooth, very seamless. That's fantastic. But on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, I'm not really sure why, but there is a very sharp edge. And I don't really mind it all that much, but I think it can cause some hand fatigue or finger fatigue for some people who have particularly fragile hands. Maybe it could be the case. I'm not like judging or anything. But the reason why most people will still probably prefer the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is because it has a 99% flat display. The reason it's 99% is because, first and foremost, Xiaomi has reduced the bezel to an absolute bare minimum, and they have a micro curve. It's not even a tiny, it is a micro curve right on the edges, the left and right edges, that is. And it looks really nice, but it basically solves any and all issues that you could ever possibly have with curved displays. On the other hand, the X100 Pro has a proper, significant curve in its display. Love it or hate it, it's there. So that right there is a choice for you. Do you go for the more comfortable, better weight distribution and just the general comfort in the palm of your hands with the X100 Pro? Or do you sacrifice a little bit of comfort and go for a bolder, more unique design with, of course, the flatter display, so to speak? Now look, I'll be completely honest. I don't face any of the issues that many people claim to face with curved displays. I just don't. I actually prefer curved displays over flat displays. I know my existence is a contradiction, but that's just the way I am. I'm giving you the facts, now decide for yourself which one you prefer. Moving on to the display itself. I think the display is actually a little bit better on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. Just display and content consumption as a whole. First and foremost, the brightness. You see, the peak brightness is 3000 nits for both. So it should be similar, but it's really not, because the regular brightness is actually a little bit higher on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. On a day-to-day usage, I have noticed that the Xiaomi 14 Ultra tends to be brighter in general as opposed to the X100 Pro. This is with manually maxing out the brightness. It just has a higher stable brightness, simple as that. And that could be worthwhile for some people. Now, for me personally, because I don't really go out in the sun all that much, it doesn't matter all that much. Again, this is a personal thing. But for those who might want a slightly brighter display, well, then the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is the way to go. But that's not all. You see, I did mention content consumption. There's a very good reason, because the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, it has HDR10, it has HDR10 Plus, and it has Dolby Vision. Dolby Vision is stunning. It is insane. It is beautiful. It is absolutely ludicrous, and I just cannot get enough of it. And you might be wondering, what about SDR? What about YouTube videos, like the one you're watching right now? Which one would be better? Well, if you don't like how the Xiaomi looks, you can actually change it entirely. It has the highest level of customization that I've ever experienced in my life when it comes to the display. The colors, the vibrance, the gamma, the contrast. Every bloody thing can be changed on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra if you wanted it to. Such versatility is just unheard of in any other flagship or any other company's flagship, because Xiaomi has been doing this for a very, very long time. It is odd, to say the least, that no other company has decided to just copy and paste this feature. It's not like it's patented. Or is it? I don't know. Regardless, and of course, for content consumption, you also got to consider the speakers, right? They are blatantly better as opposed to the X100 Pro. Simple as that. I would say the speakers on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra are just as good as the S24 Ultra. They're just as good as the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I've used all three of them side by side. It's just that it is different. I would say the iPhone 15 Pro Max has more clarity in general, like it is very sharp and clear. The S24 Ultra goes for a little bit more bass, a little bit more oomph in the quality. But the way the Xiaomi works is that it has similar levels of loudness or volume, so to speak, but it has so much richness in there. It is really good. I think it helps because they have upward and downward firing speakers instead of the earpiece speaker that we use in most other devices, and that might help with the richness to a certain extent at least. It definitely sounds better than the X100 Pro. There's no contest in that regard, so for the sake of this comparison, the Xiaomi does take a win. So with that done, let's jump straight on over to performance. Well, you see, this is a bit of a toss-up because on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, upon first glance, yes, you do get the bog standard latest generation Snapdragon chipset, which is great. I say bog standard, it is the best bloody chipset you can have in Android smartphones at the moment at least. And on the other hand, with the X100 Pro, which it goes for a different route, kind of ends up in the same destination. It goes for, I believe, the MediaTek Dimensity 9300, if I'm not wrong. I'm not entirely certain, and I don't want to look it up because I'm lazy. But well, it uses a latest generation flagship chipset from MediaTek, which some might find it to be a little unorthodox, and definitely won't be able to trust that it's going to work out at the end of the day for a long period of time, because you are buying one of these flagships for a lot of money and you're hoping to use it at least for 2 to 3 years, right? Ideally 3 years. But the point is that at the end of the day, yes, even I would say that the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is the one that is the safer choice with performance. But however, I do want to point this out. The X100 Pro, to this date, I've had no issues whatsoever. There have been no problems, nothing at all, and it works perfectly well, just as well as the Xiaomi 14 Ultra or any other device that has the latest and greatest from the Snapdragon bucket. Because MediaTek's new chipsets, they work. There have been no issues. I've done photo editing, I've done very high resolution and raw photo editing from this camera right there, not just this one. So look, it works at the end of the day, and I don't think it's gonna be a problem for most people. Now, in terms of 2-3 years and how it's gonna age, I have no idea. I've just used it for a few months, and in the few months time, I've had no problems. That's the best way to put it. So in my opinion, the performance at the day I'm making the video, no problems whatsoever. They're basically the same. But if you want to go for the safer route, then obviously the recommendation would be the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. However, when we are thinking about battery life, see, things are a little bit different. Now, I do think that in general, when you're using the Xiaomi 14 Ultra for regular tasks, like let's say you're watching Netflix, YouTube, Instagram, Well, you're not watching Instagram, you're scrolling Instagram, you're using WhatsApp, maybe you're making a few calls. Well, then you're not gonna have any problems. In a way, actually, for the sake of this comparison, you're gonna have even better battery life as opposed to the X100 Pro. But this advantage kind of disappears when you're using the cameras a lot. Now, other heavy tasks like photo editing or video transcoding, all that stuff, that doesn't affect the Xiaomi 14 Ultra as much. It's specifically the camera. You see, when the camera is being used quite a bit, especially when you're taking multiple photos, or maybe you're taking high res, maybe you're taking raw photos, maybe you're shooting videos, then this one heats up. It heats up a lot. I didn't actually mention it in the performance department, but it does heat up quite a bit with the camera usage particularly. And when that happens, yes, the brightness does dim down a little bit. That is also something to keep in mind. But the biggest issue is that the battery life really takes a hit. It's probably because of the heat, maybe, I'm not entirely certain, but the processing is so heavy with the cameras on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, as opposed to the X100 Pro, which is weird, but it is the case, and it has actually been the case ever since I've used a Mi 11 Ultra, way back in the day. That's like 2 years ago or something like that. And yeah, the problem has been the bloody same. Now, obviously, this is going to depend on your use case. If you're going to use a camera throughout the day, then yes, the Xiaomi is going to die way faster as opposed to the X100. But if you're just going to use it normally, like a regular device with a little bit of camera usage, then it's going to be roughly the same in terms of battery life. So the concern is only if you're particularly interested in the cameras, which I guess you're going to be, because the cameras are something else on both of these devices. We'll get to it. Now, before we get there, let's finally wrap up with the software, because I do want to emphasize something here. People really do not like the softwares that we have on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra and the X100 Pro. I don't really understand the hate. It's odd, because the way I see it is that every single task that I do, which involves Instagram, YouTube Studio, there's a bit of messaging, WhatsApp maybe, calls, and well, that's pretty much it. I don't really have a whole lot going on, and also obviously mails and so on and so forth. I've never faced any issues on either of these software experiences. There are certain things obviously that could be improved. There's always going to be something or the other that can be improved. There's no question about that. But, however, I don't understand why there's hatred for it. Like, yeah, disliking certain absence of features or the presence of a bugged feature, so to speak, that I understand, but I don't know. I just don't feel the same. Also, I don't game on my smartphone, just so you know. It's why I haven't talked about it, because I don't like it. It doesn't sit right with me. So I just don't do it at all. Now, the fact is this. I think the software experience is fantastic on both, especially when it comes to customizability, which is something I really care about a lot. I do think both of these are very good, but the X100 Pro is a little bit easier to use for one bloody goddamned reason. The icons. You may have heard me complain about the icon situation. It is iconic. I didn't even mean for that horrible pun. I'm so sorry. But anyways, the icons, you just cannot change it to round unless you're spending a whole bunch of time. Even if you do, you might just have to get lucky to get a good round icon pack in the Xiaomi theme store. No such issues on the X100 Pro. Now, I don't know if this icon thing is a mental blockage that I have in my head or something like that, but what I do know is that I think just simply because of that, the hassle-free nature of having just round icons in there, in the X100 Pro, it just works for me. Simple enough. Also, some people have complained about the notifications being a bit of an issue on the X100 Pro. I haven't faced anything as such. Having said all of that, I do believe that the Xiaomi 14 Ultra's new operating system, I think it's called HyperOS, yes, that's it. Well, it's a little rough around the edges. It's not quite finished. You know how when One UI from Samsung came out the first time, it had certain things that needed to be polished? That's kind of the state that Xiaomi is in. Now, whether or not they will polish it as well as Samsung has polished One UI, that's a different story. And finally, one last thing, the fingerprint scanner situation. Now, look, I have the pre-installed screen protectors on both, so the performance has been really good. But there are two issues that I face on both of these, or rather one issue on the X100 and a different issue on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. So on the X100 Pro, it's just situated really low. I don't like that. I wish it was kind of where my thumb would naturally rest, as opposed to being right at the bottom. Might be a technical issue, I'm not sure, but hey, Xiaomi doesn't have such a problem. And well, it's a good placement, but I do believe that I need to apply a particular amount of pressure, more pressure than I do with the X100 Pro. Now then, finally, for the cameras, I think this is where my statement comes in with its truest form. I don't know if that made sense, but you know how at the beginning of the video I said that both of these phones are very similar when you look at it from a bird's eye view with a general perspective, but when you look at it up close with the specifics, then they are drastically different. That holds particularly true in terms of the cameras. Look, I'm gonna tell you right now, for point and shoot, the X100 Pro is the way to go. It's that simple, because you could have any kind of desire you want for any kind of photograph, and it can do it, the X100 Pro. It just has basically every single option that you could honestly fathom when it comes to point and shoot. It's very versatile. That's basically what I'm trying to say here. You see, you might want very high contrast stylized results, you can have textured mode. You could want natural colors, for that we have Zeiss natural colors. If you want really vivid colors and a lot of vibrance, a lot of saturation, that is also kind of handled with the vivid mode. So you really have it all. The Xiaomi does have something similar. It has Leica Vibrant, which gives you more vibrance, and Leica Authentic, which gives you, well, it does give you natural colors, but it also messes around with the contrast. So here's the thing. I do like Leica Authentic on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, no question about it. It's the mode that I use the most because natural colors, high contrast, that's kind of the thing for me. But it can also sometimes really ramp up the contrast and really crush the shadows. You could end up with lower dynamic range in certain situations. It doesn't happen all the time, but the inconsistency is definitely much more on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra as opposed to the X100 Pro, which is why for point and shoot, this is the one to go for. Then portraits, stunning on the X100 Pro. Without question, you're gonna get near perfect results almost every single time, and you have an ass load of customization, and you can choose from the bokeh to the kind of contrast that you might have, the kind of colors that you can choose from. It's crazy. I've made a whole camera review because of that bloody reason. There's a whole section for portraits in the camera review for the X100 Pro. It's really something else. But well, for the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, see, calling it a mixed bag would be a compliment, because in my honest opinion, based on my usage and the camera comparisons that I've made, which are essentially like documented proof, the Xiaomi's portraits are trash. Being completely honest here, once again, it's simple. Look, it's so inconsistent with the two modes that it has, the Leica portraits and the master portraits. You're either going to end up getting blown out highlights, weirdly crushed shadows with Leica portraits, or a completely flat and weird looking portrait with master portraits. So yes, sometimes the results are good, sometimes they're phenomenal, no question about it. But most of the time, it's very inconsistent. And yes, also I understand the 75mm mode is very good on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. But guess what? The 85mm mode on the X100 Pro is also sensational. You don't believe me? Check out the damn comparison. I've made it, and it's insane with the X100 Pro. The link is in the description. Check it out for yourself if you don't believe me, because you will start to. It is something else. It doesn't even have a 75 or an 85mm lens. It just uses processing to produce photos that are more often than not significantly better than anything you could get in terms of portraits alone, as opposed to the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. And now for night mode, I do believe that the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is a little bit better, especially when you want a versatile night mode. There's a reason I say that, because you get, once again, both Leica Vibrant and Leica Authentic options with night mode. With Leica Authentic, you get very natural, very nighttime looking shots with dark night skies, high contrast, and it looks very realistic and very proper. And that, is just something I really like. As opposed to the X100, which will give you, in general, very bright night mode shots. They'll be beautiful, they'll be clean, they'll be highly detailed, noise free, all that jazz. But at the end of the day, the realistic look of the night mode shots from this, it just makes it my absolute favorite camera that I've ever used for night mode specifically. But then with selfie portraits and selfies in general, both are really good, like surprisingly more consistent with the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. But there is one thing to keep in mind. The Xiaomi's selfie portraits can look a little flattering. Now whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's going to depend on you, whether or not you prefer it. I think I kind of like it. I kind of like the look of the selfie portrait. It's not too flattering to the point that it looks weird and artificial, but it is also kind of nice to look at. especially my ugly mug on the face. Anywho, let's talk about video. See, it is a little interesting. So 4K 30, actually it does end up looking a little bit better on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. The detail level, the colors, everything just works a little bit better, a little bit more optimized with 4K 30 specifically. Because at 4K 60, you lose out on some dynamic range. You get this HDR mode that only works with 4K 30 specifically. And with 4K 60, you don't get that. Similar story with 8K. The dynamic range isn't that big of a problem, but the 8K's stabilization is not good as opposed to the X100 Pro. You can walk around with the X100 Pro shooting 8K with the main camera and it will look perfect. With the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, you're kind of gonna have to stand in one place, which is not very versatile, is it? Which is weird to say because the Xiaomi can do 8K from all of his cameras, all of his rear cameras, and the ultrawide 8K is very nice. It has good stabilization, it has fairly good detail preservation, but the 3x and the 5x 8K, it just feels unnecessary, and I kind of feel like if Xiaomi spent the same amount of time refining the main camera 8K to give us good stabilization along with the ultrawide 8K as well, that would have been significantly more worthwhile and more fruitful. The microphone quality on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, however, is the absolute best that I've ever experienced in my entire life. It is something else. The way it reduces background noise whilst bringing out my voice and the clarity in my voice, it is stunning. It is beyond impressive. You don't believe me? Once again, video comparisons with both the X100 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro Max against the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. They're in the links in the description. Check it out for yourself. You're gonna have your mind blown apart to smithereens. But anyways, selfie video looks significantly better on the X100 Pro. We get night video, which looks quite nice on both. We get the 1080p super stable video on both, which doesn't really work well on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. There's this exposure problem, the detail level is not nearly as high as the X100 Pro because the X100 Pro's 1080p video just looks insane. They do something, some voodoo with the processing that just works and it looks incredible, the detail level that is. As for slow motion, finally, we do get 1080p 240 on both, which works quite well. I do think that the 1080p 240 is a little bit more detailed once again on the X100 Pro. However, we do get 4K 120 slow motion on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. It is such a beautiful feature to have. But then you might be thinking, well, the X100 just seems like a better option, right? For point and shoot, once again, it is more than likely going to be a better option. The Xiaomi 14 Ultra, on the other hand, this is made for professionals. So that is where it has its advantages. You get the master cinema mode in the video mode itself. You don't have to go to any separate mode and it just works with 4K 30. It gives you a flatter profile and you can color grade it to your heart's desire and it just works so well. If you want to go even crazier and if you want to go even granular, then you can go for the log video in the director's mode. And that's where you have every single option that you could ever ask for, including that insane variable aperture thing that we have here. It is a fantastic thing to have. You can just customize to your heart's extent, just get the exact kind of shot that you could ever hope for. It really is something else, and I'm just glad that we have such a professional option on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. It really does work, without question, and it looks stunning. The log video particularly, it may not have perfect stabilization, but it does look really, really nice. No question about it. You have a very professional looking device, you have very professional modes, and the regular point and shoot stuff is kind of like an afterthought. That's kind of the way it is. Think about it, because anyone that is a professional will more than likely use raw photography and then grade it themselves. Maybe they'll use log video and then handle it themselves. Maybe they'll use master cinema in a pinch and once again color grade it themselves. That's the key here. That's what they're going for. And I think it's an interesting approach, one that definitely works, but only for the right kind of audience, which is why this comparison is so important. If you're not interested in the professional stuff, the X100 Pro is really going to be the right decision for you. But as I mentioned before, if you are a professional, there's nothing that even comes close to the Xiaomi 14 Ultra's sheer versatility in that regard. So with that said, I do hope you guys enjoyed, found this helpful, and well, let me know if there's anything else, any other issues that you guys may have faced with regards to both of these devices. It usually helps out a lot in terms of these kinds of videos. So I'll be seeing you guys soon enough with many more to come. Cheers.